This is GamesAtWork.biz, your weekly podcast about gaming, technology, and play. Your hosts are Michael Martin, Andy Piper, and Michael Rowe. The thoughts and opinions on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests alone and are not the opinions of any organization which they have been, are, or may be affiliated with.
This is episode 411. PavARotti is my CoPilot. Hello and welcome to another edition of GamesAtWork.biz, your weekly dose of technology, snark, and more snark, because that's what we bring to you. My name is Michael Martin. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm joined by the others that are here as well. Michael Rowe, I hope you're having a grand day today. How are you?
Yes, I'm just full of information on episode 411, but I am glad to be here with my friend and co-host, Andy Piper. Andy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Michael. Yes, I was just musing about HTTP error codes, which don't seem to be very relevant to our show, but the last sort of 10 or 15 episodes have all in some way related to, the 11 episodes have related to our HTTP errors. Gosh, I'm such a geek. But that's what we do here. We get together, the three of us, and geek out, nerd out, and talk tech, so let's do it.
Which is fun.
Yeah.
It's a great way to spend the day.
Well, we're going to start in Europe this time around with one of the happiest places on Earth. And I don't know if the Finnish Opera qualifies as one of the happiest places on Earth, but they are dealing with virtual reality where they've done a one-for-one model of the Finnish National Opera House itself. So you can build sets, you can move things around, you can do lighting, you can do all kinds of design. What did you guys think about this? It looked pretty darn cool from the video.
I don't know. Yes, it does look pretty cool. I thought the emphasis on things like workplace safety through VR training and enabling people to visualize emergency situations and things like that is quite interesting. I don't know. I felt like it was a more of a press release than anything else, which is legitimate. I mean, it's a unique use of AR, VR. I should say VR, specifically VR in this case. Although they then refer to this tool called XR, and they're using a specific brand called Varjo or Varjo, which is for this specific use case. It's not. You're not going to throw on your Oculus headset and go check out the Finnish National Opera, as far as I understand it, Finnish State Opera. I found that to be interesting as well, that they are partnering closely and it needs to be this very specific high-end experience. But it does look cool. I think the more that, and we've said this many, many times, the more that these things are used in realistic scenarios, the more that these things can be accepted and understood and taken into the mainstream.
In the spring of 2007, I worked with a company out of Los Angeles and created a video that I could have swore was the precursor to the promo video that they just did for the Finnish National Opera. Even some of the camera angles and some of the phrasing of words matched verbatim with that video, and I have it in my archives. Unfortunately, it was an internal video.
So we can't put it in the show notes and share it.
So I can't put it in the show notes. But it was fantastic. Now, this time of year is usually when I'm doing a performance of some sort, and having the ability to pre-visualize, as you say, the sets
and the blocking,
the lighting. The lighting is the biggest one to me, because usually the only time you get to do lighting is during Tech Week.
Right.
And it's usually like 2 days before the performance is live. And so if you've ever gone to a tech preview of a live performance, usually they're working the lighting during that tech preview, and you'll see mistakes as they tune things. And to have this environment that allowed them to actually not only work it in advance, but because it is a virtual environment, they could have many different shows working at the same time, working their lighting for the show. Think of spotlights, think of mood lighting, everything else. that was really, really cool. I thought the one-for-one model was nice for that. Sets is another important thing. The physical movement of sets. If you've ever watched a show in the West End or on Broadway or at a really nice theater, and you've watched how during the action on stage, sets are moving around as they shift from an indoor-outdoor scene or whatever, right? That takes a lot of planning and coordination, and a lot of times the actors are in the way, right? So being able to model all that and see it, excellent use case. It's one of those use cases we've been talking about for a very long time. I'm really excited to see the Finnish National Opera is using it, and it was really cool. So I look forward to seeing more organizations use this digital twin of a performance space to improve the quality of opening night.
So I was thinking about two other quick things before we leave this, and that is one, my son is going through a program at the North Carolina School of the Arts, specializing in sound design, and he's getting a fair amount of work doing load in and load out for various venues around here. And as these touring companies are going from stage to stage in different cities, their ability to be able to predict and know the dimensions, parameters, and so on, and be able to very rapidly say, hey, this is where things are going to be, and to also train, if you will, the stagehands and others to know what to expect and where to place things could speed up those load ins and load outs as they go. So I'm really intrigued about that. And then the other aspect, Andy, I was reminded of our Royal Shakespeare Company experience from, gosh, what was it? Last
summertime, wasn't it? No, it was last year. Yeah.
And where we, as the audience members, were able to experience the performance. So there's very small hop from what we're just looking at here, from a presentation, production, etc., into performance and sharing in a performance that should be able to happen too.
Your point that you made on the load in, load out reminded me when I was performing in Atlanta with an opera group there. We had a very, very large stage that we did stuff on, and we were doing Gilbert and Sullivan's Gondoliers, which has this really large dance number. The entire cast, lots of movement, etc. And we toured that show to a small community college about an hour and a half north of Atlanta, whose stage was 1/3 the size.
Oopsie.
And having the ability to pre-visualize would have just been awesome. So
continuing on with the story of Finland, they are now the 6th-time winner of the world's happiest place. There was a fun article from The Guardian that came across this. The thing that grabbed me from this is there's a competition to be able to go to a happiness masterclass. And the author of this article actually didn't want you to go and enter because they want to win and go to this masterclass themselves, which would make them happy, but not us. So if you're curious and want to do it, I would say go and do that. I've never been to Finland. I'd love to go and just to see how happy things are.
I have been.
Andy, you had a point you wanted to make?
I have.
You've been, right?
I have been to Finland many years ago, to Lapland specifically. So I'm not sure that I've seen the heart of day-to-day real Finland, but it was a fun trip for sure. I was going to comment that the title of the Guardian piece is a bit clickbaity, because it says the Finns hold the secret of happiness, and it's not what you might expect, and then doesn't really tell you what it is.
It doesn't tell you what it is.
Well,
it just says there's a competition.
I thought they did. I thought they said lower your expectations. That was the key.
Right.
It's like the second to the last sentence in the entire article.
So staying on the VR theme, we had an article here from VentureBeat from the Bored Apes owner, Yuga Labs, for their second massively multiplayer virtual reality experience called Other Side, or Trip to the Other Side. And I took a look at this video. I had to say that the words that came to mind for me were the teeming masses of humanity, of how many avatars there were that were being shepherded and guided around. I watched a fair amount of the video, went through the material on it, but that was sort of the thing. It's like, my gosh, moving massive amounts of people around in physical space, like at a theater or in Finland or wherever, is one thing. Doing that in a virtual experience becomes very disconcerting super fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, one of the things we talked about and we've seen ourselves as the technology has matured is the limits of how many live connected individuals you can have to a specific sort of instance of a service, and have it be realistic, contiguous, fluid, all of those things, without having, the crossing of boundaries of objects and textures and all the other things. This calls out this company, which I think we've talked about in the past, called Improbable, which is a UK-based organisation that has been around for a number of years, and I know people that went to work there at different times, and their selling point's always been about how big a virtual environment they can make, how they were really sort of, the technology was all about scaling to many thousands of individuals. So they're talking about last summer's first trip to this other side, Yuga Labs environment, was 4,500 people, and this time they were hoping to get to sort of 10,000. I don't think we've seen the number. I think we were talking about this between ourselves around what this experience, the description of what this experience is like, how you kind of flow through this virtual world and this experience. It did sound very sort of psychedelic, and whilst I'm certainly not averse and no stranger to having strange experiences in a gaming environment, it does feel very different generation to what I'm used to in terms of how people are getting excited or why people are getting excited about these spaces.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, and Andy, you talked about kind of the technical aspect and the scale aspects and the experiential, and Michael, you talked about the teeming masses. I think, at least mentally, I'm at the point of, is the scale more or less, and I think less, important than the experience? Just because you can have your avatar show up in a world that's smooth with 10,000, 100,000, 1 million other avatars, is that a consumable environment? Is that experience something that allows you to focus on the things you want to focus on? Just looking at, and I watch clips of the video myself, the amount of information overload that occurs when just 5% of those people start chatting,
and they're talking over the other person,
or emoting, or whatever,
at the same time when
right?
they're talking, right?
Yeah, I mean, so the ability to kind of focus in on the experience that makes sense for you as an individual in that space, right? There's a cognitive load point where the technology becomes interesting technically, but almost self-defeating from an experience perspective, and the ability to consume what you're seeing.
I think that's a really good point, but it's also important not to lose track of another thing that we've constantly talked about in terms of how online gaming, massively multiplayer environments where you are interacting with large numbers of people and coordinating potentially groups of people in those kind of environments, can be applied back to your day-to-day, back to your work life, back to your ability to sort of see kind of different dashboards and situations with data streams. I think it's a very, very fine line, Michael, between what you're describing, between what I'm describing and then where you're going with actually, no, this is too much. No, everybody's talking at once and nobody's making sense because there is no small group collaborative environment within that, potentially. So I see this as really interesting. Partly also because you've got this one organization, Yuga Labs, who's behind a few of the different elements of metaversal elements, if you like, here. So the NFT stuff, the Bored Apes, the Yacht Club stuff, and then this sort of immersive type stuff, with the influencers that are being mentioned here, as well as people that have some form of influence over groups of people and shepherding them into these environments, and then also this almost test bed experience for these very, very large scale environments. I think there's some really intriguing crossovers going on here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, the design challenges that turn it into something that goes in both directions for a value statement, right? What you can take out of there into the real world, and what in the real world needs to go there to make it consumable.
We'll probably bridge into this a little bit when we start hitting some of the AI related topics, because this is definitely a spot where AI could do a lot to help bring order to chaos, if you will, or create small affinity groups in a way that can be easier to work their way through. But these kind of large environments, if you think about it, if you're in a stadium full of thousands of people, the ability for the main stage or the main presenter or wherever to communicate out is pretty evident. That exists. A way for the audience to communicate back is, through applause or through dancing or through other stuff. That's pretty evident. But we're about to enter a new world. I believe that this is now going to enable that, allows the ability to create smaller groups off of large-scale groups in a very, very dynamic way. And that's different. That feels like it'll be different and address your point, Michael, which I thought was really good on the cognitive load.
Yeah, and I think there's two aspects to that too. And we're sorry to rat hole a little bit longer on this one, but I think it's a really interesting topic. The stadium example, right? If it's a concert or a sports event, the 80,000 people in the stadium are focused down, and you might be, yelling at the ref from your seat in section A12, but the guy in double Q73 can't interact with you in the stadium. But in a virtual environment, the way they're currently set up, they can see that, and that connection across, those 80,000 dynamically changes in such a way that, yes, it may cause some good incremental things, but it may also cause a lot of, like we said, cognitive load issues in the other direction. Interesting challenge space to see what happens.
So the next story actually relates nicely to this too. We have 10 jobs that they suggest exist only in the metaverse, and I would say another nice bait-clicky title.
Yes.
There's some truth to that, but there's also some real truth to the fact that skill sets that do exist in real life, IRL, do translate really well into a space like the metaverse, like VR, etc. And one of them that spoke to me really well was the notion of a tour guide. So I think that was
because those don't exist outside of the metaverse.
No, of course not.
Looking at the titles, like put metaverse in front of your title, and those are unique.
Yeah. So number
sorry,
6.
Go ahead.
Is,
yeah.
No. I right. That was my point. Thank you. You absolutely reinforced it. But
I bang it hard.
But the notion of a tour guide, I think, is incredibly important, because you take the example of what we just talked our way through. It's a rich, immersive space, and someone who knows it, maybe was part of the development team, maybe has been around it quite a lot, can help the new people who arrive to say, you know what, there's something that's really cool that I know about, and I'm going to show you what it is. And we've done that sort of thing before too, as we've toured. One that springs to mind immediately is Venice. Venice is pretty darn easy. You can go to St. Mark's Square. You can go, look at a few of the bridges and so on, like everybody else does. But if you have a local who knows the place, they'll be like, you know what, the best place for this kind of antipasta is going to be over here. And the best place to go and get a coffee and to talk with people and people watch is going to be over there. And you can't get there unless you know those people who are going to let you up to their rooftop terrace, and now you can see things that you otherwise wouldn't have seen. So there are some really interesting aspects to this that I think will be valid, and there will be value there, and people will want that, and they'll probably pay for it because it's needed.
I like this story, although it is, as you say, very clickbait headliney, almost misrepresentative, because it, as Michael just said, it basically sticks the word metaverse on the front of a load of jobs that absolutely do exist in the real world. But there are a few reasons that I love it. One of them is that the very first image under Metaverse Events Managers, I was looking at it and I was thinking, that looks very familiar. And sure enough, you click through, it's a 13-year-old image from Second Life taken in 2010 in a dance club environment in Second Life. Not that I've spent lots of time in dance clubs in Second Life, but anyway, I do think that in the context of what we were just talking about, that virtual experience with Yuga Labs, absolutely you needed the influencers. You arguably would have needed the tour guide or metaverse event managers, I'm sure. You needed the architects that I mentioned here to build the experiences. As someone who is learning 3D modeling for 3D printing in the real world rather than for metaversal purposes at the moment, that's something that I'm very curious about and in awe of people that have those skills already to build things. I was also, and this isn't in our show notes, but looking at this week's some of the announcements coming out from Epic and Unity around things like the Fortnite editor, which is essentially sort of a cut down Unity editor, and it's kind of a step up between almost the Minecraft editor and giving a lot of these tools more capabilities and more of an audience. Also folding in, I think it's Sketchfab or Fab, one of the organizations that they purchased last year. Making all of these into sort of a single catalog for all of these kind of objects. So I can see that, again, we've got pieces of the environment starting to come together or starting to coalesce, perhaps. But yeah, I think that the concept of whether these are full-time jobs in the metaverse or whether these are sets of skills and sets of capabilities and understanding of how to go ahead and run things. They refer to metaverse stewards and as sort of people that take tickets at doors, or you could talk about them as moderators. To some extent, I think moderation is almost always the largest problem in any of these sort of networked environments where people exist and behave. And I think that those continue to be challenges.
Yeah, the other biggest problem is people.
Sure, completely.
Hence, you need the moderation.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, so let's leave VR AR for a minute. Although, like I said, I think we're going to bridge back and forth here a little bit because the topics are very, very related. We have an article that caught our attention from Fortune magazine, and this was an example about a professor from the Wharton School using the vast set of AI tools that are now available for free to go do some superhuman business results. So I don't know what it is. I guess we were all like taken in on every clickbait article that there was this week. And to me, reading through this was an example of some of the promo videos that we've seen from Google and Microsoft and a bunch of others where you get an idea.
Together in article form.
Yeah, exactly. You get an idea and then you now evolve that idea and you write some email and you set a meeting with the right people and then you create PowerPoint charts and then you create images and then what's the third step in the underpants gnomes? Oh, profit. Right? So within 30 minutes, this particular guy was able to say, hey, I could create a whole marketing campaign, do everything I needed to do, and off we go. Do I believe it? Nope. Do I believe it's going to speed things up tremendously? You bet. And I haven't tried doing this yet, but maybe it's a challenge for us to take on board and say, hey, could we replicate this if we wanted to, and would it provide something real that we can do within the confines of physics, space, time, legal reality? So staying on the same theme, we had an article from Wired where Microsoft is really leveraging the CoPilot brand name now across a variety of different structures, sources, and resources. In fact, I was playing with the Bing interface in Skype before we started here, which is also leveraging the Chat GPT kinds of capabilities in the Skype environment. And Microsoft is using Security Copilot to look at ways of working through the AI Ops toolchain and to determine where there might be security vulnerabilities, and then, of course, what to do about them. So all within the span of less than 25 days or so. One thing after another keeps rolling out on the parade.
Yeah, I think they talk about when do you have that pivot? When do you have the knee of the curve? When this stuff is going to go explosive and change everything? We're starting to see more and more products quicker and quicker. Now, we don't know how long they've been in the works, right? So, and about 5 years ago, I was working with our research team doing some stuff with AI and security, the value there is really the ability to see those patterns in huge data sets, massive data sets.
And to be honest, something like this, so specifically Security Copilot, where you've got a model that's trained on previous security issues and good practices, codified, being able to pattern match across wide areas, and
it makes so much sense.
It's almost like, to some extent, writing your code tests and making them execute all the time, based on expected reproducible patterns. I think that this does make a ton of sense, and I'm not too concerned, especially where, in principle, the outcomes from something like this are better software, better, more secure code, more secure systems. In principle, those are the outcomes. It can, and we all know that taking too cautious an approach to something can sometimes slow you down and cause you to not do something innovative and not do something that you that's breakthrough thinking. But I certainly think that, in principle, taking a corpus of information and using technology to apply pattern matching in this way is really useful. I think the Copilot branding is interesting as well. We briefly mentioned it last week about this extension of it across a range of different tools and services from Microsoft. It's kind of like applying Clippy to everything, but it's also kind of muddying the water with GitHub and what they were doing pre or just post acquisition.
Yeah, the one thing, and Andy, I agree with you on kind of the value and the obvious value that comes out of it in the security space. You expect certain patterns. When something breaks that pattern, there might be a security vulnerability. You can go back and look at the history, blah, blah, blah. Remember, the power of AI, though, is setting up a GAN. And you can imagine smart security vulnerability experts, i.e. people who
human beings
wanting to use that same pattern and invert it to say, how do I create a security breach that does not flag as a security problem?
So just quickly, because we sometimes we shouldn't always expect all of our listeners to know all of the terms, and we shouldn't expect them to have been listening to us for many, many years. Although we love both sets of listeners, new and old. When Michael refers to here a GAN, a GAN, he's talking about a generative adversarial network. So you have two neural networks competing with one another to basically improve a set of
each other.
Yeah, improve each other. A set of machine learning data. Yes, I think that's exactly right. We've got another link which I came across this week on LinkedIn, of all places. I found LinkedIn, possibly because I'm spending more time there recently for reasons, to be quite a good source of thought leadership at the moment. And this is a post by a gentleman called Peter Nixie, who is a founder, engineer, designer, an angel investor, writing long form piece about having been contributing to Stack Overflow for many years, as I have as well. He's in the top 2%. I'm in the top 4%. I met somebody last night who's in the top 0.5%.
Wow.
And the point of that,
I'm in the top 95%.
and the point of that is Stack Overflow is a website where developers can go and ask questions and have other developers answer them, help to answer them, provide information with context. So when you ask a question there, you're not supposed to say, it's generally not so useful if you say, hey, I'm stuck with this, someone do it for me, or how do I do X? You should kind of say, how do I do X? I've tried Y and Z, and these are the errors I'm getting, and I don't understand why these things are the case, and how could I improve what I'm doing here? And the sort of the golden outcome is where you have a really good conversation with an expert who can pick apart the situation and help you come to an outstanding conclusion, which then everybody votes on how high quality the answers are. What a golden opportunity for somebody, a machine that wanted to learn, to go and find out exactly what the questions are and exactly what the correct answers are, because they've been validated by other humans.
And upvoted, yep.
Right.
So
great data set.
Peter here is talking about the idea that what if we all stopped pooling our knowledge and telling each other how things work and sharing and educating one another and just give it to the machine? Well, then what happens to all of our libraries? What happens to all of our shared sources of knowledge and information? We don't have those. We have the machine. What a bleak future.
And on that happy note, I think we got just a couple of quick hit posts left.
No, we don't. We're going to stop there because this is a good place to stop, and it's not that bleak. It is absolutely an important topic, and we shouldn't let it lie there. My sense is it's not bleak. This is now an opportunity for people to do the training of the systems. And when he talks about what is ChatGPT 6 going to be trained on, in theory, it should be trained on the problems that were exposed in ChatGPT 4 that now have been resolved and vetted by humans and agreed to that this is the right answer. So it may well be that Stack Overflow is not the searchable library anymore. It's going to be ChatGPT 6 or something like that in the future. And then, Andy, you might be now the one who is the top whatever contributor in that particular large model.
I love your optimistic view, Michael. Given how well ChatGPT and other models like this are at explaining how they came up with their answers, I don't know how Andy could ever be the top contributor, even though he's the top contributor in my heart.
Wow. Way to turn it.
Because
I believe in you, Andy. I believe in you, even if Michael doesn't.
Way to turn it around at the end there, Michael, with that nice statement. Yeah, I was about to think, I was just thinking, well, actually, it turns out that ChatGPT was me all along. But
see that.
Apparently,
but you're good at explaining things.
Apparently not. What about those quick hits?
I think we're out of time.
We are out of time. We'll include them in the show notes. You'll get to see them. And if we get to them next time, you'll hear it all about here on gamesatwork.biz.
See ya.
See you, everybody.
You've been listening to GamesAtWork.biz, the podcast about gaming technology and play. We are part of the Blueberry Podcasting Network, and would like to thank the band Random Encounters for their song, Big Blue. You can follow us on Twitter at GamesAtWork_biz or at our website at GamesAtWork.biz.